All right, everyone. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you. So, second school meeting of the semester. I hope your first 6.5 weeks went pretty well. Today we have on the agenda some updates from Inspire on career education. Then Paula will give us only a 15-minute glimpse of her sabbatical. I'm sure we could talk for hours, but we'll get like a 15-minute glimpse, and then we can follow up on the authentic assessment and grading in the age of AI with Diane later if we need to. We have a guest, Maria, who will talk a little bit about ACU Local. I'll give some updates on the instructional discovery complex. That's the building we're moving to. And then this is at Jojo, so Jojo will give some updates on the FOS stuff. Mike, you want to come to the front?
Real quickly, our application is going to be opening up on the 14th for all any CE programs. I'm the co-chair for the committee. I don't vote, I'm just the one who coordinates it with Jennifer Lewis. I'm putting together a little thing for our school, and now everybody wants a copy of it. A little bit easier on how to fill out the application, understand what the application is. For if you don't know what it is, your program is CE related or it's designated as a CE program. We have additional funding available through the college. You have to put in not a request, it's actually an application type thing for what your programs want to do to enhance it. And then they're all graded, and then whatever money we have available, we're able to analyze and figure out that if another committee makes the selections based on everything. So it's kind of opposite of program review. If you get something in program review, or you've asked for something in program review and you ask for it in CE, we don't give it to you twice, even though it's been tried. We try to get as much as we can. I know program review is frustrating because there's not a lot of money there. This year, we asked for 2.1 million overall for our budget. We were given 1.8 million. It's down a little bit because of Chancellor's office picked the pockets of us and said, hey, we're gonna use some money somewhere else on a special project. And it's statewide, so it wasn't just us. They got decreased a little bit. We didn't lose money, but we just lost a little bit amount of what we had to start with. So we set aside a certain amount of that. I think it's like $700,000 or $800,000 for faculty to apply for different applications to use the funds and do everything at the end. Additionally, you may want to talk to Dean, because he's our dean. At the end of the year, this is where a lot of the people don't know about it. Come March, for money, and our money is a little different than the circular 1 year type thing. It's actually over a 2-year period. So at the end of the second year of the cycle, if there's money that hasn't been spent by somebody else, it's all recouped, and your deans get together and basically buy items that can be bought real quick. It has to be some type of equipment or whatever else you guys need for your program. Last year we had $350,000 with the deans reallocated. We spent it all out of, I think there was a request for like 450. So we almost got all the money spent. I mean, all the stuff they wanted, we spent all the money. So it's a little bit of what's there. CE has a lot of different opportunities also. So if there's something you want to do to advertise your program, I know Jamie Ledesma, who just walked in, not to embarrass her, just went to Montgomery High School with Jenny and some other people. We pay them $200, I think, for the team to go over there. So it's available. You just have to apply before you go. It's not retroactive. So these are different things that the money is there. So if you have questions with CE, let me know. Again, you have to be something in one of your programs has to be designated as CE related. I think the only department that does, or actually school that doesn't have anything, is English, and we're working the English and arts, and we're working on that right now because of the technical writing and stuff. Questions? I'll come back in November next month and give you guys a little bit more with some stuff under the application, because the application, when you apply for it, it's not due till December. The requirement we have is we have to get it started by December. And then you have until January sometime when you come back to finish it. Yeah.
So how do we know if our department is CE? It's basically everyone is English.
It's the different, the question was, how do we know if we're CE or not? We have different programs with the top codes. I have a list of it. So if you give me the program you have, I'll see it's actually a CE program. It's been written up that way.
Okay, so the list that we.
Yeah, they're already been designated when the programs were built.
Okay.
And a lot of them have been adopted in and stuff. So there's only one school that has no programs. We have some programs in ours. I think the criminal justice part of it.
Public administration.
Public administration has one. Child development, family studies has some. So and there's just certain things you can build a program to get. Okay.
That was gonna be my question, but more so specific to majors, is there gonna be a listing of majors?
Basically, for CE, if it's the CE related programs, I know Alma went through this where poli-sci didn't have a program and they developed a degree in that. So you can modify your degrees to be CE related. It's more career oriented, where the person can actually get a job right after they get out of here. It's a little harder with some other different programs, but with the way the world works today, I mean, we can pretty much, it can be designed that way. The thing I caution you right now is, he wants time. With all the reorgs going on right now, number wise, I don't know if you guys know about this, all the numbering and stuff. Taking something on right now is going to be heavy because everything's being redone. So, let us know. We'll work with you guys and stuff to see how we can do it. But everybody's going to get buried with that stuff. So, any other questions?
I do recommend taking a look at the list. There's a huge amount of programs on there, and then once you find something that's similar, come talk to us so we can talk about things.
Do we have time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious, can you give me an example of what are some of the things people are asking for?
So can I?
From the funding?
Yeah, through this
Oh,
application.
for CE funding, people have asked. You can ask for equipment. You can ask for tutoring. We're pulling the tutoring out this year because we have a separate account for tutoring. There's $80,000 set aside for CE programs, and I know money just got funded for tutoring. I think the list has just gone out and everything because there wasn't anything to start with. We pulled out $80,000, so that'll be set aside for all the CE programs to help out with that. But there's different innovation type things you can build if you want to enhance your programs. If it's been designated that way, there's different ideas, and so that's what they're looking for is outside the box what we can do. And there's people. We've outfitted the automotive department buying equipment that they couldn't get because of the need, because of what's going on right now with their program being rebuilt and not going to a type Mesa. So there's a lot of different things you can do. There's different, and I wanted to go through the application, but it's not actually, we were fixing it. There was a couple errors that we had to fix. The committee wanted them fixed before we actually put it out. So I'll bring that back to you in November, show you guys how easy it is. And like I said, it's a CE program, or you want to look into it. There's different ways of doing it. We just have to add it. Yeah, we actually got ordered several years ago. One of the things that we lacked in criminal justice is we wanted to be able to show a courtroom setting. So we bought a courtroom, all the insides. We have it in storage because we don't have room to put it in because of the buildings, but we will soon. It's been moved around. And so those are the things you can do to enhance your programs. Okay, and it's additional monies. Yeah.
And Mike, the top codes, somebody, if you're interested to see if your course qualifies for career education, you go to the top codes and it will say whether or not it's career education, because honestly, those of us in poli-sci, I didn't know that public administration was a career education, but they did an inventory. I don't know if some of you were here for that or not. And that's how I discovered that public administration had a top code that qualified as career education. Yeah. So it comes down to the course top code.
Yeah, and reach out to me. Like I said, I have the overall list we have already. It doesn't mean that other programs can't qualify, because originally no one in poli-sci had any idea, and we got the program started with. I got to be able to have one degree there, so it has to be a degree designation. And again, it opens up some more doors. One of the things, like what we could not do in our programs, is Jamie's program, Pathways to Law, because it takes more time than just getting out of community college degree. So those are some of the restrictions we have. Any other questions?
Anything about the biannual report that goes along
yeah.
with it?
Well, if you're CE program, we're going to be having a biannual report. Actually, we'll be doing them annually, but it's the governing board is our supervising body. So we'll be reporting to them in March. So they'll be coming out in October. Should be getting an email already if your program is already designated. There's 4 questions. We shortened it down. So it's basically, it's kind of like a progress report on how your program's doing. And the Board of Education, the trustees have to look at this and basically agree and say, we're going in the right direction to make sure everything is what it's supposed to be per the state guidelines. So that's what that's all about if you get it. And you get paid to do those for CE. I think you get $250 or something like that. The other thing you're going to have is probably coming out if you have CE classes, CE courses, is top codes and SOC codes. What they're going to be doing is asking you guys to update them. I think it's probably going to be a lot of it. And it's basically what it is. The SOC code is something that's a job related type position. How much can a person get to work in these fields that you guys are trying to teach in? So like with firefighters, what would be the annual wages for the different areas and stuff like that? They have to be updated annually or biannually by the state. And so they keep looking at those things because I think the average wage was $25 or $26, and now it's going up again for a person to actually survive in San Diego.
Thank you so much.
This is kind of an interesting juxtaposition of speakers because our department, humanities, philosophy, is about as far as I think you can get on campus from career ed. We're gonna work on that. But anyway, I'm Diane Palmer and I am a humanities professor, and I recently came back. I'm still having shock to my system, came back from sabbatical. And my project was inspired because during after COVID and then in the November of 22 when ChatGPT came out, I think all of our worlds kind of shook. And I immediately started getting some emails from different campus leaders who I think maybe misinterpreted the thrust of my project. Do I need to share the screen or where are you sharing?
Screen is already sharing what you.
Okay, yeah. So I'll in a second I'll get this into slide format. But I feel like I may be swimming a little bit against the tide in this group, maybe because I teach humanities, which is exploring how humans have made sense of their world, how they've made sense of their place in the universe, how they've tried to understand the universe. And I never wanted to teach AI in these. And so my project has nothing to do with infusing AI into the curriculum. For me, that's just not what I want to do. The idea of reassessing how I assess my students and how I grade my students is what I wanted to focus on, because for me, and I think for most of us, especially if you're teaching online, the ChatGPT and all its friends really made it difficult to see if we're actually assessing real learning in our, especially online classes. I've got to say I'm struggling this semester, even face to face, with continuing to have conversations with my students about the inappropriate or appropriate use of AI. But what I came to realize was my methods and traditional methods of assessment in general, I don't think we're serving my students well. Assessment and grading had been developed in probably the late 19th and early 20th century, and it served a completely different demographic than those people that we serve today. It largely served white males, oftentimes people who had the privilege to have had parents who graduated college and all that kind of thing. And it was serving a 20th century world. So I was looking at ways to change, and I think this is the part I'll focus on today. And let me know when I'm running out of time. Another time, if anybody's interested, we can go into the equitable grading part of it, but I really would rather talk about assessment and how we can make assessment better. And I don't want to focus every part of this on the topic of cheating, but it is something that's kind of hard to look away from these days. And so in evaluating motivating factors that make students cheat, I found three main things, and I'm not naive. I'm aware that I'm never going to keep cheating entirely out of my classroom, but usually a feeling of low self-efficacy in school leads students to feel like they need to cheat. Low intrinsic motivation, and this is a big one for me, and I'm really not sure yet. It's something that I'm trying to continue to build, is a feeling of wanting to learn for learning's sake. I'm doing program review, so I was just reviewing my colleague Peter's program review from last semester or last year, and the goal that he had, which I think is easy for us to lose sight of, but the goal that he said was, we want to develop lifelong learners. And I think that applies to all of us, but the school system and society as a whole really does not encourage that as a priority. And that's what I want to do in my classes, is I want to develop people who have a lifelong desire to learn and who are learning for the intrinsic pleasure that it brings, not for points or a grade or pat on the back. And this is a really hard one to beat, because most of our students have come out of a system that has rewarded extrinsic. You know, you get your point, you get your star on the wall, you get whatever it is. So it's an uphill climb. But the third thing, and all three of these things working together, put already stressed students. Most of our students have at least one job, maybe two jobs. Most of them are caretaking. Some of them are caretaking on both generations, parents and children. They are really stretched thin, and they perceive this high pressure to perform. So some of the things, I'm going to skip the survey, but this, my course is in Canvas, and it is published so that anybody who's using Southwestern email can access it. So let me know via email if you want access to this, and I'll send the link. There's a really cool survey that a man that teaches at NYU came up with and generously shared, and it has all kinds of detail of how can you tell if your class is set up in ways, is designed in ways to either promulgate this desire for intrinsic learning, or to promulgate the idea that cheating is the quickest path to get to my goal. Not everything that I focused on was because of the AI, but AI kind of accelerated my need to rethink the ways I'm assessing and grading my students. As I said, DE has distance ed, and AI is a horrible combination for traditional written responses. And many of our students that come from backgrounds that maybe they might be English learners, they might be coming from, they're the first generation to represent, they are not served well by many of the traditional methods of both assessment and grading, and nobody is. But it hits the people who have had the fewest opportunities hardest. I talked about, I'm going to skip the rigor versus vigor, but no, I'm not. We're always encouraged to make sure our courses are rigorous. And is your course rigorous enough? And if you do this equitable grading thing, is your course going to become sort of dumbed down? And turns out rigor is a really punitive word. It's not a word that I want my courses to be associated with. It's restrictive, it's limiting, it's kind of punitive. And I want my courses to be vigorous instead. And I think you can do that by using authentic assessment. Authentic assessment, and this is just a definition from an expert at it, it involves the application of knowledge and skills in real world situations, scenarios, or problems. Authentic assessments create student-centered learning experience by providing students opportunities to problem solve, to inquire, and to create new knowledge and new meaning. So authentic assessment is probably not going to speak to the lower parts of the Bloom's taxonomy of learning. It's, you know, the memorization, the understanding. I don't think that Bloom ever said regurgitating, but I'm pretty sure that's what some of the traditional assessment has asked students to do, but it's going to be more on the creative thinking, the analysis, and the evaluation and synthesizing of information. When I first started thinking about authentic assessment for the humanities and philosophy, it was difficult for me to figure out because we don't have really very many career paths. I'm not churning out, museum curators here that I know of. I don't know if you've found that in the philosophy end of things, but we can still, even if you're not involved with a career ed discipline, we can still infuse authentic assessment. And one of the ways that I think is the easiest way to do that successfully is making the assessment meaningful to the student's own life. So in my case, well, I'm gonna use you again, Peter, if it's okay. Peter teaches an amazing world religions class, and world religions, studies things that are centuries and millennium old. Yet he asks his students in a sense to bring that into their own lives. What about these wisdom traditions can you pull from 2,500 years ago that are pertinent to your own life and write about that? And it brings it to a place where they can see that it's relevant to them and that they do have some benefit in understanding something that was created 2,500 years ago. How much longer do I have, Josie? I don't want to go too long. Okay. I'm going to get to, I want to share instead the page of my Canvas course with this. So the Canvas course is 4 modules, and the one that I want to share right now is, let's see where it is. SWC Faculty Spotlight of Authentic Assessments. What I really like to see, if anybody is already doing authentic assessment, which I think some of you are probably already doing, especially I'm thinking like in the criminal justice programs or any of them really, family studies for sure. I'd like to add some things to this. So I have an assignment linked within my Canvas course of a book cover project that Don asked his students to make. It was an existing book. He is a graphics design instructor, and he provided with them tons and tons of scaffolding to get them to a point of being able to use the software that graphic designers need to understand how to use to redesign in a more effective way a book cover. It's asking students to engage in a creative way and in ways of not only learning new skills with software, but new critical thinking skills about, here's what this book is about. Why did this book cover go in this direction when it has nothing really seemingly to do with the themes of this book? How can we make this align better? Is there anybody in here from family studies right now? I think probably, okay. So this Shannon Shealy is not teaching here anymore, but she was an amazing and still is an amazing family studies teacher, I think in Reno now, but she did this great discussion, and it was an assignment where she asks her students to, she gave them options on how to learn about pregnancy, labor, and birth, and just in ways that pertain more personally. They could either reflect if they had been through that themselves. They could do a sort of a reflection of a Hollywood birth and delivery or labor scene. Just all of the specifics are, I'm just going to click on this. So this is an actual assignment, and she's got learning objectives. She's got very clear instructions for her students. These are the 3 options, and you can see how cleanly she's designed this to make it easy for students to follow the instructions. She asks them to cite a textbook, so there we have our course bigger. She asks for, please reach out, and then tells students how they're going to be graded. So this is an example of an authentic assignment for family studies that I think is just wonderful. And again, I would love to add anybody's, if you have things like that, you just email me if you think even a little bit like this might qualify. I would love to get a huge repository, and I can add tabs and tabs and tabs to celebrate what teachers here on campus are already doing. The one that I went to, if any of you have ever had the opportunity to go to one of the learning community symposiums at the end of the year, I went to the buy-in symposium at the end of last year, and Crystal Alberto and Laura Brooks led that. And it's where students write and explore things having to do with their own culture all semester long, and they present in a public forum at the end of the semester, and they have some of them did electronic presentations, some of them have the old-fashioned three panel board, and you could go and visit and get really good food and listen to the students individually presenting about the things they had learned. And this was in fulfillment of a personal development course coupled with English 115. So it's just an amazing level of creativity here on our own campus. So if you have something like that, or you know of a colleague that has something like that, send them my way and we can add them into this this module of examples. I feel like I don't have a really good sense of when to stop. I'm now good because this, let me just look at there. This is the all the different pages for authentic assessment, and then there's a section on equitable grading. You're just doing this to me so you don't have to read my report, aren't you? Okay. And then at the bottom for my fulfillment, I included a bunch of assessments from my own humanities courses that are examples of authentic assessment. And if anybody ever wants to talk to me about equitable grading strategies, they don't always include no points. I've switched over to an incomplete method of grading, which I like the way it's working out, but I understand a lot of people don't think that's a great plan for them. And just as a last thing here, I have a page on if you're not ready for ungrading, there are things we can do to add equity into our grading. Feedback is the top one. Rubrics and Canvas is such a good, it's one of the things Canvas does really well, it's grading rubrics. Collaborative work and instructor flexibility in terms of late work and revisions. So there's a lot of things we can do if we're not at the point where we're, ditching points. All right, anybody have questions? April?
And we can access this?
Yeah, I'll send you, but I don't know how to tell you other than if I give you the link.
I'll just email you.
Okay, yeah, if you're interested in accessing this, it's there. It's public, I just send you a link to it. And yeah, I would love that. And argue back at me. Feel free to have a conversation about this. Yeah.
Did you come across any samples, and I would love to see a portal so that any ways to address the AI issue discussions?
It's not foolproof. The only thing that I'm doing, and I think you all are probably already doing, is trying to make the discussion prompts as personalized and as reflective as possible. Like, because I'm still getting it, and I'm really struggling this semester because it's my first face-to-face since COVID. And I had a whole conversation in face-to-face classes with my students about where's the ethical line. What do you guys think is okay? And okay, so here's our plan. It was taken not seriously by some. I try to make the discussion prompts as reflective as opposed to summarizing. I don't want a summary. And we can see when they're coming in as AI products because it doesn't follow the prompt. It's usually very organized with bullet points and numbers and no spelling errors. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer. Gerardo?
Yeah, I'm at the other end of teaching. I've never taught an online class. I teach strictly in person. Closest I've been to is teaching online as a hybrid. And it's really problematic in person instruction as well. The use of AI.
Yeah.
And you create assessments many times, and it's so darn frustrating when students rely on AI for the simplest things.
I have to say I was really troubled by. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's actually a question. When you read a paper and it dawns on you, five sentences in, this is too good to be true, and it's and then you run it and you find out that you're creating the work of a bot.
And I don't trust the detectors. The detectors are unreliable as well. That
was going to be my next point. For me, they work 8 out of 10 times.
Yeah, but do you know they do? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
You bring the students to office hours.
Yeah.
And you discuss it. And yep, they admit,
Yeah,
I did use it to this extent,
yeah.
and you see the similarity.
And here's the thing, I want my students, and this is what I think our culture, our school culture and our culture is messing up is we're encouraging people to be expedient, to get through the educational process, to get onto their high-paying career. We are not encouraging them to struggle with ideas, and that's what writing makes you do. And if you're not struggling, and they haven't been taught that it's good to struggle and it's good to fail with writing. And so that's my message to them every day is like, I want a shitty first draft. And you can always revise it, but it's really hard.
Diane,
Yeah.
I was just gonna mention that we need to remember that a lot of our students who just graduated in May, they're the generation from the pandemic. COVID, and this is what they fell back on. This is what they were relying on, AI. And so I think we need to somehow redirect them. I'm not sure I have the answer. Quite frankly, it's very frustrating. I echo the same feelings that already have been expressed, but I think we need to remember that and so forth. By the way, I took your workshop on opening day. I recommend it highly, Peter. I think you were on Zoom too.
Thank
I
you.
highly recommend it. But you've given us a very good idea of what you
The
did.
recorded workshop is actually in the Canvas course, so that's, if anybody wants to listen to it, I only did my part, I didn't think Elisa wanted me to put her part in there. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, Joe.
Oh, for me in my class, and I tell them very forward that in four-year institutions, not everybody does MLA or APA, their professors will teach them, hey, in the syllabus you're doing Stanford, Chicago, Tribune, whatever. So I think, one, I know because I recommended a student to ChatGPT. I didn't know that was what it was back then. But he can't do footnotes in ChatGPT. And so endnotes and footnotes at Chicago sounds completely out of it because it takes away from the way it's structured. So all my
I want to
classes.
hear my students' authentic voices and I want to
Yeah.
hear their struggles with these ideas but you're right, and it's so funny because my daughter's girlfriend just said, you know what, you got a bunch of COVID kids.
Yeah.
And that hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah.
Last question. Diane, can we have last question?
Everybody can hear me, right? Alright, so, for years, I've been using written essay examination, these sorts of things. And, one thing you become a master at, in other words, is you recognize a student's writing skills. So, when paper time comes, and usually, it's night and day difference. And when they attempt to write a thing with AI, such as this, when they're writing wrong writing stuff, you become familiar with their writing style, the way in which they write, the way in which they approach sentences, sentence structure, and then all of a sudden, this is completely different. There's a different way to do it. Someone else has written or some computer, and many of the AIs are using AI instead of technology. They seem to have a certain common rate to them. They seem to have started to do with AI is exploiting what you know about writing, and it puts it all together at some particular point. So your content is just perfect.
Yeah, and this is the problem for me is I don't want to be a cop. I want to be a teacher. Yeah.
I just want to, first of all, I really did enjoy this conversation, but I just want to make one comment. I think that race against technology, you will always lose. You have to come up with other creative ways to do things. I'll just give you one example. Writing style, you can feed ChatGPT a writing style. You can give it some of your essays and some of the words to use and not to use in the style to write it. You write it with ChatGPT and then you put it into humanize it, an engine that will take 20 seconds to turn it into such a way that none of the detectives will detect it. So you will always put a battle against tools. It's very smart what they can do. So I think these conversations are good. Okay.
I don't know. One of the things, I'm sorry, but one of the things that I saw that I really loved is if you in your prompts, because they copy and paste the prompt, especially in online classes, in the prompt, in tiny font, in the same color as the background, you put something in there that they won't notice as they copy and paste, that says something like, use eggplant 4 times, right? Then when they copy and paste it in, then you'll be able to see it, like you can just do a search of the paper and you'll find that it used eggplant 3 times, and they won't know because they don't know what they're writing, so it's one of those things where there are little tricks you can do that are somewhat helpful so far, but.
Yeah, and it's good that you all share because it does help. Now, before I go to Maria, I just wanted to say thank you to Leah and Aurelie. Aurelie has been helping the office 20 hours a week, and she's very essential with this topic. And then before I go to Maria, there's still tons of food. You want to have some food, candies, there's Leah, there's chocolate chip cookies. So let me introduce Maria. She's from the Institute. She'll talk a little bit about ASU.
Thank you. I appreciate being part of the conversation, an easy segue out of, AI and the education and classroom setting. And I know I'm going to talk about an online program that's a little bit different though, but thank you, Dean Munson, for letting me be here. And I'm grateful for this time. I'm also conscious of time of being up here and talking to you all. So before I dive in, thank you, a little bit into our program, I just wanted to share a little bit about myself, and then I've got a question for all of you as well. So my name is Maria Rodriguez. I serve as the site director for our newest site with Arizona State University here physically located on Southwestern's Community College campus. So it's been very exciting. I've been in the role now for 5 months. Today is 5 months officially. Prior to joining ASU, I was actually at UC San Diego. So I was there for 10 years. Most recently, I was working out of the Chancellor's Associate Scholarship Program, which is a high-touch local support program for students, and we also had partnered with Southwestern Community College. A little bit in terms of who I am, I'm a first-generation American, so my parents immigrated from Mexicali, Baja California, and Guadalajara, and I'm also a first-generation college student. So I really came to understand the power of education and how it was able to transform my life and the life of my family. Curious to know, do we have any faculty here who identify as first generation students by raising hands? We've got a couple. Okay, great. And that's and I wanted to take time to acknowledge that because it's really important when we can recognize the successes and celebrate them ahead of knowing that in November we'll be celebrating our first gen students, which there's quite a few here at Southwestern Community College. So a little bit in terms of our program. So ASU Local was created for really 2 reasons. The first is we wanted to provide students with an accessible pathway to be able to obtain their bachelor's degree. But the second is knowing that not all students have the flexibility to leave their community either because they can or they don't want to, right? Many of our students, and I was hearing some of the conversations here, many of our students are caregivers, have dependents, have children of their own, are working full-time, part-time, right? And so unfortunately, they are not able to, transfer into university knowing I don't have the ability to take classes at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, right? Or, things like that. So our program really does provide students with that flexibility, but what's different about this particular program, and I think what makes it special, is that we have in-person support, and we really emphasize on building community with our students, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but all of that is really in part because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to close this achievement gap, and that's not easy, to be quite honest, right? We know many of our students, especially right here at Southwestern, they're motivated, they have the ability to pursue their education. There are just particular obstacles and or factors and priorities in place that make it a little bit more challenging to do so. And so what we see here, and particularly in Chula Vista, we don't have too many four-year institutions nearby, right? The closest tends to be San Diego State University, and it's still about a drive, 20 minutes without traffic, right? So what we're trying to do is provide this opportunity for students to still be able to have flexibility of online courses, because that's really where the need is, but they don't have to navigate that ASU online experience on their own, and they shouldn't. So we built out this cohort model, and that's essentially how our students join us is through a cohort. And I know I talked a little bit about what this is, but it's a hybrid college program. So for the purposes of time, I'll kind of go here and talk about this in-person support. So right now, I'm a staff member of one, so I'm also serving as students coach, and I'll talk about what their experience once they join, looks like. So every student is going to have bi-weekly coaching sessions, and that's really focused on talking about their goals, talking about their progress, how they're doing, and how we can help them stay accountable to those goals as well. We also focus heavily on, we call it cohort time, but that's really going to be the time that students are going to build community with each other, right? We know in research and high impact or promising practices that when students feel like they belong on campus, or they feel right, students are going to continue on to their second year and so on and graduate. And so we really want to focus on that for students to be connected to peers with the goal of obtaining their bachelor's degree. And then the last part that we focus on for our students is personal development, career development. We want students to have access to knowledge. Knowledge is power, and to have tools and skills to their toolkit, as I like to add it, so they can feel confident and ready upon graduation to then either find a job, advance in their career, or to pursue graduate school, which we actually have 2 students who want to do that, so it's pretty exciting. And then I talked a little bit about online courses very briefly, but our students complete their courses. They actually use Canvas as well, so it's a similar tool, and they're completely asynchronous. So a student is able to build their schedule as needed. I will say, and I'm going to dive in and talk a little bit about our students, because we do have students already, which is pretty exciting. But for many of our students who are either working and or have children, oftentimes after work is when they will go ahead and log into their courses, and then they'll complete what's needed, and then their weekends as well to be able to do that. So again, that flexibility is really key for our students. So I talked about this, I won't go too into it, but again, the way that I would like to think of this is really focusing on that holistic support for student. We know academics are important, but they're not what I would say the most salient identity, because if we're not doing well, then how can we expect our students to perform well and to do well, right? And so we have to focus on other aspects of what's going on as well in their lives, and that's what we're trying to do here with this particular program as well. Here's a bit of information. So I shared in terms of our site here in Chula Vista, and we're the 3rd site to open physically on a college campus, but we have a total of 6 sites. So we have 2 others on 2 community colleges, one in Long Beach and then one in Yuma, Arizona. And then we have 3 other sites, one in LA, one in DC, and one in Hawaii. So this data that you're seeing here is pretty much a combination of all of our sites. But 90% of our students, right, are from underrepresented communities. Many of the Chula Vista students identify as first-generation college students. So I can share with you that statistics for our particular cohort is 80%. For our site overall, we're seeing at 60%, with the majority of our students also being adult learners. And then a little bit in terms of academics, so we're seeing 80% of our students, and this is being populated from spring of 2024. So we try to focus in on their grades, but we know it's not just grades in terms of looking at academic achievement, but for our students, 87% are in good academic standing, meaning that 2.0, meaning that GPA of 2.0 or above. And then lastly, we've got some students at 36% with that 3.5 and above. So just wanted to highlight a few of those figures for students. And then I'll tap into financial aid. So quite frankly, this is probably the most important is cost of education, cost of the program. I think first and foremost for students, it's important for them to feel comfortable and confident in moving forward in a process and making a decision of where they're going to choose to spend their time, because their time is valuable. So I like to approach talking about financial aid as transparent as possible, and then bringing in their family and their loved ones, their support system, right? So that they're not having to make that decision on their own, because that's important when we talk about it takes a village or a community, right? Usually those folks are the ones who are involved in that process. So for our program here with the figures that you're seeing, our tuition varies, and it varies because of college fees. So our programs range anywhere from 11,000 to 16,500. I will say in my experience, our programs have averaged about 15,500 per year. Now that's a chunk of change, right? When talking about it being for 1 year. 70% of our students are federal Pell Grant eligible because many of our students are in financial need, and then we provide all students with the 20% scholarship. That applies automatically, and that is with them throughout graduation. So with the support of their federal Pell Grant and our scholarship, students will see anywhere from a $2,000 to $7,000 out-of-pocket cost. So again, I think what's most important to take into account into this is for students to do their research and really to take a look at a cost comparison of other institutions and the factors that are really important to them, of whether it's that flexibility and the support when it comes to this approach, right, in on our particular program, and then making that decision as well. Now, the exciting part that I really wanted to highlight is a bit in terms of our student profiles and then our most applied for majors and where we're at. So we have 10 students who have started. They are our inaugural cohort. They have trusted us in supporting them, and so I'm very grateful for these students. And I, wanted to show just to kind of get a sense of the pulse of where students are at, and I'm sure you all have a better sense really working directly with students in, your classroom spaces. But we had 17 students who applied, and of those for fall, and our fall, we're on a semester base, so we started in August as well, right? We have 10 students who joined us. The bottom table here that you see is all of our majors. Psychology tends to be a really popular major. Business also is a highly applied major. And then we have kind of a sprinkle, early child education, and then students who are interested in pursuing healthcare as well. But what I just wanted to acknowledge and share is a student quote based on, why the student is doing what they're doing, and I'm going to read this because I feel that it's pretty powerful. But for this particular student who's an early childhood education major, what they shared is, I want to show my daughters that dreams can be achieved. I want to be a role model for my daughters. I want to obtain my bachelor's degree, not only for me, but for them. I can't quit for them. I tried to go to school when they were younger. I wasn't able to finish, but now that they're older, I'm able to do it. I made a promise to myself to finish and graduate. And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that they're going to graduate and that their daughters are going to see that, but it just goes to show the power of, support and education and really the reasons behind why they're doing what they're doing as well. So I didn't want to leave this slide without acknowledging that as well. And then here's just a few highlights of like who our students are in real time. We had some welcome week events. And then right here we have, you know, families join our orientation, and we had a family day as well for students, because that's really important to include them in that process. But just wanted to, I will very briefly go over what this looks like, because I want to be conscious of the time that I have with you all. But students typically have to have a 2.5 cumulative transfer GPA to transfer to ASU. Most of our students, we encourage them to complete their AA as well. It's not necessary, but it is helpful because they tend to complete those lower division GEs and what's needed as well. But if you have any questions on this, I didn't want to get too into the weeds of it, but essentially that 2.5 cumulative GPA, just with the exception of 2 majors, business is 3.0, engineering is 2.75. And that's the only exception is for those 2 as impacted in terms of the GPA. Mm-hmm.
Do you guys allow concurrent enrollment? So like if they're not finished their GE, they enroll there and still finish?
Yes, I think at that point it would just be financially what would be best, since they can't receive that financially disbursement for both institutions. But I have a student that we've talked about that as well for that dual enrollment. So yes, I see a couple of hands.
These 15 students that you cited,
Uh-huh.
they came from ours.
Yes, they're all from Southwestern Community College. Yeah, so that's, and it's and we would only support for transfer students. So any student, yes, could apply to ASU online, but we're like, nope, let's go to Southwestern, and then here is a pathway. I guess I should have explained it in that way. There's this pathway. Mm-hmm.
Do you have scholarships for the students that transfer?
Yes, so all of our students receive a 20% scholarship on their cost of tuition, and that's with them every year until they graduate. And so that's automatic. Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if it's the same professors that teach in person as there. And there's just a really famous psychologist, Glenberg, who moved from, you know, he went to ASU just a couple of years ago, and I'm just wondering, would they be able to take classes like with Art Glenberg, or is it like a totally different sort of set of professors?
Yeah, no, so the professors who are employed, there's the same professors, it's just the professors who have decided like I'm gonna do, you know, my online courses. And I think it provides students with some of that flexibility. Usually they cap at about 130 students for an online course. So it's just dependent, right, if that particular professor was like, yes, I wanna do this, or I think I heard a professor earlier that was like, I think it was easier, like I do the in-person, you know, courses and maybe hybrid. Right. So there's some flexibility, yeah. Mm-hmm.
At 10 current students, I'm not too concerned, but as this grows, how will this impact Southwestern's full-time equivalency? Who's getting credit for that student? ASU or Southwestern?
When you refer to credit, do you mean
full-time equivalency? That's how we get money.
The idea is it's not competing with us. The idea is we have a lot of students that are really smart, have a high GPA, but they can't get into SVSU or UCSD because, you know, the demands, otherwise you have to go teach classroom. But the idea is they could finish courses with us and get it done, and then instead of transferring to UCSD, they transfer to ASU, and they stay on our campus. The building that we're moving in has the university center, so Maria's office will be there. They have like connections with ASU, contact with ASU, but they're not our students anymore. So we get all the FTS for what they finish with us, and then they transfer to ASU.
So it's just upper division?
Yes, yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, we have our students coming first, and you're gonna complete what's needed right at Southwestern, and then here is this pathway for transfer. Mm-hmm. Yes, okay.
On fees, so the students who are part of the Southwestern College ASU local program, they're paying out-of-state tuition.
That is correct. Yes, they're paying out-of-state tuition. So the reason that we have that scholarship is because we acknowledge with the out-of-state tuition that it's pretty much double the cost, right? If it would be for in-state tuition, and so that's where we have that scholarship. Long term, we're trying to make some changes, right? But it's challenging to do that with financial aid and what's eligible, particularly the Cal Grant knowing that our students are not eligible for the Cal Grant. So that's where that piece of doing that research, right, and talking through with students, oftentimes in doing financial aid one-on-ones with also the support of our financial aid department. So there's a really clear understanding, this is what the cost is, this is what your financial aid is gonna look like, so that you know what your out-of-pocket cost is. So the transparency, that's the most important, you know, as they're making that decision, so that they can know.
I had a coffee with a former student this week who is at Point Menagerie, who has a similar program for criminal justice students. So she's in her bachelor's program pipeline. She was really struggling and asking me to help her with some research because at Point Menagerie they do not have access to LexisNexis, and she was frustrated because as a student at Southwestern College for the past few years she's had access. And so she was saying if she was enrolled in a traditional program with Womenaz, she would have access, but in this cohort. So I guess she's discovering some lesser student support opportunities. And so I think that is a question that I would want to make sure people have laid out for students very clearly. Access to support that might be different when they leave Southwestern College and then different.
Yeah, so that's a really important point that you brought up, and the access to support is gonna look different with this particular model. So our students have access to ASU online like tutoring that's available 24/7. We actually just hopped onto a tutoring session during our in-person dates, and so that was, you know, really neat to do that. Students have access to Southwestern's basic needs center. There's just limitations, so that's just due to certain funding in terms of, for example, like gas cards that maybe as Southwestern College they were able to access, they can't access as an ASU student. So it's funny that you mentioned I've been trying to find ways to circumvent that, right? Because this particular program, yes, our students are physically on campus, but their academic courses are completely online. So it's been a little bit of a gray area. I'll be really transparent with that. But I'm trying to find ways for our students to still feel supported because they have support from myself. I'm hiring a coach, right? And those community-based resources, it's just looking real different because, right, they're on this campus, but there's still limitations to what they can have access to here. And then opportunities, right? You brought up research. And so that's part of what we're talking about with our students. How can you try to build that rapport with your professor, going to office hours, especially for students, for example, who want to go to graduate school, thinking about those letters of recommendation, right? So we have to be really intentional of what we're sharing with our students, but I'm also very much actively trying to find opportunities with what's offered here in the community as well. So that was a very long-winded response of I'm still trying to navigate that piece, you know, being really honest with that. But so far with the ASU online services that have been available to students, they seem to be receptive. It's just kind of running into different challenges, right? Bringing food insecurity, housing insecurity. So, you know, something for our students to consider, to be brought up in conversations.
Maria, thank you. Sorry, it's 1 o'clock. I don't want to be rude, but if you have to go to your lecture, go ahead. Thank you all for coming. I'll share the information so you can fill and ask more questions. And then also, Jojo had some announcements. We're going to email them. So just read them, and I'll talk about the new building next semester. If you want to come by and drink coffee and have a look, I can show you some of the slides. Grab some food on the way out. I think we have tons of cookies. Make sure to save hot chocolate for Maria. And thank you everyone for coming. Yes, well, I can.
I have a slide up there.